Okay, so this is chapter 13 for leadership. Okay, so remember I said previously, okay, leadership is focused more on the research in leadership, focus more on leadership style. Okay, they like to develop a theory. The researcher develop a theory for leadership to identify what is the leadership style that best for employees. Okay. Alright, so at the end of this chapter, at least you get this, I think 7 or 8 learning objective. Okay, so first you know about the trait theories of leadership. Okay, and then you can identify the central tenets and main limitation of behavioral theories. Okay, so the first theory is trait theories, and then understand about the behavioral theories. Okay, so the next is contingency theories. Okay, so at least you're able to contrast the theories in contingency of leadership. Okay, and then there is a contemporary theories of leadership. Okay, and their relationship to foundational theories. Okay, so the next is able to discuss, okay, the roles of leaders in creating the ethical organization. Okay, and you can describe how leaders can have a positive impact on their organization through the building trust and mentoring their employees. Okay, and then what is the challenge to understand the leadership? Okay, so at least this is 7 you should get at the end of this chapter, 7 objectives. Okay, so before we go the next to understand theories, first you have to understand what does it we mean by the leadership. Okay, so leadership is the we refer as the ability, okay, the individual ability to influence a group towards the achievement of a vision or set of goals. Okay, but when we said is a leader, okay, leaders not necessarily are managers, okay, and also that not all managers are leaders, okay, not because of organization that provides the manager with a formal right, a certain formal right, okay, as a manager they have some rights, okay, that this doesn't mean that they will lead effectively. Okay, right? It doesn't matter that when you say you're a manager, you hold a position as a manager, it doesn't mean that you are leader. Okay, and also doesn't mean that you can lead effectively, right? So the leaders, okay, it can emerge from within a group as well as by a formal appointment. Okay, it might be informal or formal form. Okay, or we call it as a non-section leadership. Okay, is the ability, the non-section ability leadership is the ability to influence that arise outside the formal structure of the organization. Okay, right? So that we refer as a non-section informal leadership. Okay, it just arrived that from a group. Okay, some people have this ability. Okay, when you are in group and sometimes you will act as a leader to lead your group. Okay, informally, right? Okay, so based on the research, okay, this non-section leadership or informal leadership is is important as or sometimes more important than a formal influence. Okay, so non-section leadership can influence better than the formal appointed leadership. Okay, right? So because it's image in a group, right? Okay, so that's what we refer as a leadership. Okay, so okay, so this is a trait theories of leadership. Okay, right? So trait theories, okay, trait theories, they focus on personal qualities and characteristics. To be a leader. What means that this research in this area usually focus on what is the person qualities and characteristics that can be a leader. Okay, right? So they search more. They usually search more on personality. What is the social of individual, the physical, okay, and the intellectual attributes that they will differentiate between the leaders and non-leaders. Okay, in this research, they kept doing something like this. Okay, what is the individual characteristic? Okay, either based on social or physical or intellectual attribution. Okay, right. So that in these trait theories, okay, the leadership literature or research, okay, they organize around the big five framework. Remember that personality previous chapter we identified the big five framework. They identified that extraversion is the most predictive trait to be an leaders. Okay, right? Actually, extraversion is the predictive for those who have an extraversion personality. So we can predict that this person can be a leader. Okay, right? But it can be a leaders, but this research is not identify whether they can be the effective leaders or not. Okay, so extraversion can be a leader, but we don't know the effectiveness of this person as a leader. Okay, right? So okay, so sociable and dominant people. Okay, sociable and dominant, another personality, sociable and dominant people are more likely to assert themselves in group situation. So for those who social and and dominant people, they assert them in a group situation, so that which can help to be identified as a leader, right? Okay, so for those you can see that person social and dominant, so this person we can expect them will be a leader, right? Okay, so one study found that the leaders who score very high in assertiveness, okay, a facet of extraversion, okay, were less effective than those who were moderately high. Okay, so the effectiveness of leader. So who score assertiveness high, less effective than those who were moderately high. Okay, so if you do the personality test, you get the assertiveness score is high. So if you are a leader, so this leader is less effective compared to for those who get a result moderately high in assertiveness. Okay. So this is based on the research. Okay, remember. Okay, so extroverted or leader or extraversion, for those who extraversion person be a leader. Okay, their leadership may be more effective when they lead a group of passive employees rather than proactive employees. Okay, so for extraversion, be a leader. Okay, so to be their leadership may be more effective if they lead a group that passive employee. Okay, so if they lead based on this research, okay, based on the research, if they lead the proactive employees, maybe their leadership less effective, okay, compared to if this extraversion leader lead proactive employees. Okay. Alright. Okay. So next, unlike the agreeableness and emotional stability, okay, this cannot predict. Okay, agreeableness and emotional stability cannot predict the leadership. Okay. Conscientiousness and openness to experience may predict leadership, okay? Especially the leader effectiveness. Okay, the 5. Remember, in week 5 we have 5 personality: extraversion, agreeableness, emotional stability, conscientiousness, and openness to experience. Okay, so agreeableness and emotional stability we cannot predict. For this personality, we cannot predict a leadership. Okay, we can identify whether this person can be a leader or not. Okay, but extraversion, yes. Okay, most you can predict the highest. Okay, conscientiousness and openness to experience also we can predict as an leader. We can predict the leader effectiveness. Okay, for conscientiousness and openness to experience. Okay? This is based on data from the Fortune 500 organization. Okay, right? So this Fortune 500 organization suggests that conscientiousness, okay, such as achievement, striving, and dutifulness are really related to the leader emergence. Okay. Leaders who like being around the people, okay, who can assert themselves, extroverted, and who are disciplined and able to keep commitment, they make conscientious have an apparent advantage when it comes to leadership. Okay. Sorry. Right. So you can see that good leaders here. Okay, as I said, okay, leaders for those who are able to assert themselves, which is extraversion or extroverted person, and conscientious person, disciplined and able to make a commitment they make. Okay, right. So they have more advantage when they become a leader. Okay, right. So this is based on research. Okay. Okay, so in the trait theories also identify that another important traits to indicate the effective leadership is emotional intelligence. Okay, right. So this also has been discussed in the previous chapter. Emotional, okay, emotion, and I cannot remember the name of chapter, but chapter 6. Okay, about emotional intelligence. Okay. Alright, so the component that important for leadership in EI, emotional intelligence, is empathy. Okay, empathy. Right, so the empathetic leaders can sense the others' needs. Okay, listen to what followers says and read the reaction of others. Okay, so for those who have empathy, they can listen. They can sense the other needs. Okay, able to listen to what followers says and read the reaction of others. Okay, so that is empathy characteristic, right? So leader who displays and manage emotion effectively will find it easier to influence the feelings of followers by expressing genuine sympathy and enthusiasm for good performance. Okay, so if they're able to display the emotions, okay, so it's more easier to influence the others. Okay, right? Okay, so research also demonstrate that people high in EI, okay, are likely to emerge as the leaders. Okay, even after the taking cognitive ability and personality into account. Okay, so for those who have high in EI, okay, this person can be likely to emerge as a leader. Okay, so after taking the cognitive, we identify the cognitive ability and the personality, everything that. So research identify that EI person, okay, is likely to emerge as the leader. Okay. Okay, so in these trait theories, okay, trait theories ni help to predict a leadership. Okay, but in this theory, doesn't explain the leadership. Okay, this theory just focus on what is the characteristic to be a leader. Okay, but this they don't focus on that to explain what is the leadership actually. Okay, right. So in the next theory, okay, behavioral theories, okay, we'll focus more on to identify is what do success leaders do makes them effective. Okay, are different type of leaders behavior equally effective, right? So in the next theory, okay. So but in the trait theories, okay, just predict the leadership. Okay, yeah, traits theory predict the leadership. Okay, but we don't know how to cannot differentiate between effective and effective leaders. Just person can emerge to be a leader, right? Okay, so behavioral theory. Hmm. Alright, so behavioral theory. Okay. In this theory, okay, is um sorry. Okay, so trait theory. Remember trait theory. Identify the personality to be a leader. Okay, but in these theories, okay, it's implied that we can train the people to be a leaders. Okay, right? So the study, okay, in the Ohio State studies, okay, study from in the Ohio State, okay, found that two behaviors that accounted for the most leadership behavior. Okay, so in this behavior, they identify two behavior. Okay, for the leadership behavior, you have two, which is the initiating a structure and consideration. Okay, right. So, okay. So initiating the structure, okay, uh, is the extent to which a leader defines and structures his or her role and those to the of the subordinates to facilitate goal attainment. Okay, right? So initiate structure. So they have a structure and define what is his role, what is or her role, what is the employee's role. Okay, so they have a structure. Okay, to attain the goal. Okay, or to facilitate the goal attainment. Right? So this includes behavior that attempt to organize work, work relationship and goals. Okay, so a leader in leader high in initiating a structure. Okay, leader who have a structured behavior. Okay, is someone who assign the followers a particular task, set defined standard of performance, and emphasize the deadline. Okay, this is type of behavior. Okay, they assign the task, they have a structure, they have a timetable, they have a schedule, they have a standards of performance, everything. So they have a structure. Okay, this leader, right? The second behavior, okay, is a consideration. Okay, so consideration is the extent to which a leader has job relationship that are characterized by mutual trust, respect for employees' ideas, and regard for their feelings. Okay, so that is a consideration. Okay, they just have you can do this mutual trust. Just identify. Okay, please can you do this? So they just trust the employees to complete their task. Okay, they don't give a deadline. They don't give a structured. They don't identify the what performance. So based on trust between the leaders and the employees. Okay. A leader high in consideration helps employees with a personal problems, is friendly and approachable. Okay, so this leader is friendly and approachable, and it treats all the employees as equal and express appreciation and support. Okay, so based on the research, identify most of the people, most of the workers want to work for consideration leader. Okay, so they like to work based on a consideration leader. They consider all our situation, right? Okay, so one study, one research found that okay, followers of leaders high in consideration, okay, were more satisfied with their job. Okay, more motivated, okay, and more respect for their leaders. Okay, so for employees with the leaders, consideration leaders. Okay, so more satisfied, more motivated, and more respect. Okay. Also in another study found that both consideration and initiating the structure, okay, were found to be moderately related to a leader and a group performance along with a rating of leaders' effectiveness. Okay. Uh, okay, so both, if you combine both consideration initiating, they moderately relate to leader, also moderately, the result is we cannot. It means that both consideration and initiative structure, the research find that we cannot relate to the leadership effectiveness. Okay. Okay, this group study, okay, this study about the behavioral theory across culture. Okay, so group, remember group, this has been said in the previous chapter. Okay, group is a research for the cross culture. Okay, right. So this research study among the 18,000 leaders from 825 organizations in 62 countries. Okay, so this group study program suggested that there are international differences in the preference for initiating structure and consideration leader. Okay, right? So they have differences between the culture for the leadership in initiating structure and consideration. Okay, so the study found that the leaders high in consideration succeed best in the countries where cultural values did not favor unilateral decision making, such as Brazil. Okay, so Brazil, the best that leaders in high consideration. Okay. In contrast, the French have a more bureaucratic view of leaders and are less likely to expect them to be human and considerate. Okay. So a leader high in initiative structure may be best in French. Okay. Right. So in another culture, okay, both dimension may be important. Okay. Like a Chinese, okay, culture emphasize that being polite, considerate, and unselfish, but must have a high performance orientation. Okay, so Chinese culture prefer both combined. Right? Okay, so for Chinese, maybe leader have to combine both, right? Okay, so summary for the behavioral theories and trait theories. Okay. Okay, so this part of these theories have explained a facet of leadership emergence and effectiveness. Okay. However, to identify the exact relationship is not a simple task. Still, they don't discuss about the relationship of leadership and employee. Okay, right? So just discuss about the traits, okay, the characteristic to be a leader, and what is the leader behavior, okay, in these two theory, okay, but still doesn't means that this is effective leader, okay. Alright, so the next theory will discuss in the context of the context to be effective leadership, okay. But I will continue in the next in the next class, okay. So we have to stop now because I have another meeting start at 9, so I have to prepare my things before I go to the meeting, right? Okay. You have any question?